Hi guys, welcome back to our GraphQL API series. Picking up from where we stopped in this video, we are going to set up our authentication. Alright, so we are still going to be using our default Django built-in authentication, and though we're also going to be implementing the JC Web token, so I'll be using token authentication, which is a best practice for any kind of API, but we're also going to be working with the default Django model. Alright, so let's get started. To actually implement this, you can actually create a new app for this, but I'm not going to be creating a new app. I want to keep it simple and clean, so I'm going to be creating a simple user module in our project. The reason being that we're only going to be working with the schema file, so if I create a new app, the other files may just be waste. So we're going to create a very simple Python module inside users. Alright, so in this folder we're going to create a .init file. So here we just create a schema.py file. Alright, so we can create a user type here and all that. So let's make our various imports, and first we're going to import, so we're going to import graphene, and also we're going to import the Django object type from graphene Django. Alright, and lastly we need to import our default Django model, which we're going to. Alright, so let's just define a variable for user. So this we can execute the get user model. This will give us this will return the user model for us. Alright, so up next we can create our user type schema. So we just define the class, inherit from the Django object type, and here we're going to specify our model as user to be our user type. Okay, so now we can create the mutation to create a new user using this user type. So create a new class called create user. This is obviously going to be a mutation, so we inherit from graphene.mutation return one object, which is our user type, and the field we want to use is our user type. And here we need to specify the arguments that we need to provide when making this request. And name feed, which is obviously going to be a string type. I'm going to set it to true. Password. And also an email. So these are the three feeds that we need to provide. So next we need to create our mutate method for this create user mutation. Alright, so here we're going to create our user instance, and in here we're going to set our username feed. Alright, so the email feed also. Alright, so then we get the user object dot set password. So once we pass in the username feed into our username, the email to set password, then next we need to save our user. And once we do that, we want to return the user that was created. So we're going to say return the create user. The user equals to the user that we just created. Alright, so this will return our user object for us. So that's our mutate function method. Let's actually create our root mutation class just like we did before. All our mutation that we're going to create, if is more than one, but in this case we just have one mutation type, which is the create user, and this is going to be our graphene dot feed user. Alright, so this is the only mutation class that we create, so this will be in our root. If we have any other, maybe for some reason we create another mutation object, maybe update user or something like that, we will have to also pass it under the root mutation class. Now let's create our query objects. So we just create our query root class, and here we will need to specify the user object, which is also going to be alright. So once this query is issued out, it will get the user type. And secondly, we also want to get, let's say, all users. So we need to define a resolver for these two actions. So first we create a resolver to get all the users. We're going to say return our user model, .object.all. That's all for that. So let's create the resolver to get single user. So here we need to get the user from our context. So we're going to say user. I said before that our context is kind of similar to our request.user object. So this will give us the user object that is actually logged into the app. And in here we need to check if the user object is coming as an anonymous user. So we check if it's anonymous. We want to raise an exception, said not login. Alright, as if the user is logged in, we want to return the user. Okay, that's for the single user resolver method for this user schema file. So what we need to do is we need to make API knows about the schema. So we need to register the schema in our project root schema class file. So we'll go to the project directory of our schema. So first we need to, just like the way we imported the question app schema, we need to import the user schema also, and also we need to also register that in here, so we can actually bring that first. So we are getting our users.schema.query, which is the query that is coming from our user schema, and also we need to also register the mutation for our user schema. So we're going to say alright, so that's how it's going to be. So if peradventure we have several applications with their different schema, we need to register them in our root and project schema class. So this is kind of similar to the Django URL and project URL paradigm that we have in our basic Django, where we have our different URL.py file in our different app, and we have a project URL.py file in which we need to kind of register the different app URLs and file in our, and we already have our user object ready for use. So if we head back and we can start using our user type just created. So let's test if we can actually create a new user from our browser. So if we head back to our graph, so let's try and create a mutation to create a new user. Mutation, and the mutation we want to create is the create user mutation. We need to provide an email, password. So once we have this, we need to return the user, which is an object, and inside the user we want to get the ID, and also want to get the username. Alright, so that are the two fields that should be returned. Let's run in our code and see if we can create a new user object. You're getting some error messages saying on no argument username or field create user type. Alright, and it's complaining about getting the username. Alright, the reason we are having that error was because in the root mutate method, where we have the create underscore user, we have an error. We're not supposed to call graphics.feed again, which we already called before. So we just need to call our own custom and create class, which is the create user.feed. Alright, so that's the reason why we couldn't create new users. So once we fix this error and we save our file, if we head back to our Graphql interface, you can see the errors highlighting is longer there because we already saved and refreshed. So if we run this now, we can see a new user object was created for us, which is called Reactjs 2020. So let's try and create another user now. Okay, you can see we can create new users. So let's try and get the user list. So we make a query. Alright, and we want to so we can also have the email. So if we run this query now, so let's run this, we can see the three users that we have: the test admin user and the James H 2021 users and the Samuel 22 user. So our query is working. So if we try to get the user object, the query for user, we will not get it because we are not logged in, because this user query, that's for the single user, is to get users that are logged in, because that's how we set it up, is to get the user from the context, that is the logged in user. So because we are not logged in now, if we try and run this, we see we are getting this message, not logged in. Alright, so that's everything is working fine. So up next we'll be implementing the JSON web token for Graphql. There's a package that actually helps us implement such very easily. Django Graphql and JWT. So this is a package that helps us to implement JWT, that is JSON Web Token Authentication in Django Graphql. Alright, so this is kind of a simple documentation that gives us guidelines on how to implement it. So first we need to install it. So we can copy this and install this in our terminal, and secondly we need to provide this middleware. I believe the authentication middleware is already provided for us, but we have to just grab it and check, make sure that it's provided for us. And then lastly we also need to add this JSON Web Token middleware to our graphing settings. Not lastly anyway, so we need to also provide the authentication backend. So we're going to follow this step or just to install it. So we need to grab it and install it. So while this is installing, you can go further and add this middleware, which is the authentication middleware. So we need to grab this middleware here. It's here. Alright, so it's already here, which is the authentication middleware. We need to bring in the JSON Web Token middleware into our graphing settings. So we can just grab this part of it. Alright, so here we have the authentication backend, which is so we can grab this authentication backend and also bring it over to our settings file. Now, so in our settings file, so we just paste them here. This also provides the JSON Web Token backend and also the modem backend. Alright, so we can save. So once we have the file saved, so we can add the JSON Web Token notation to our root schema. Alright, so in our root schema, which is the schema we have in our project file, we're going to bring in this under our mutation, which is the token auth, and also the verified token and the refresh token. So we can just grab this, though we are going to be making a little changes to this token auth, because this token auth, it only returns the token when the user logged in. And sometimes it's not only the token we want, maybe we also want other credentials about the user, like the username and the email. So for that reason, we'll be overriding this very mutation, which is the JSON obtain JSON Web Token. So under this mutation, that's the project schema, we paste this. So we need to import this. Import the GraphQL underscore JWT. Already have it installed. Alright, so that's fine. So alright, so this library actually gives us three mutation, which is the token auth, the verified token, and the refresh token mutation. So the auth token mutation is like the mutation for us to log in our user. So in this case, when the user is logged in, the auth token actually, the JSON web token is actually return back to the user that is logged in. Alright, so this will now handle our login. So we can actually try this out now. And why the verify token is actually to check if the token is still valid. So we can return true if the token is still valid. Alright, so why the refresh token is actually to, when our token for some reason expired, this is the token we use to refresh it. So the mutation to refresh our token. So let's try and log in now with this auth token. So if we head back to our GraphQL interface, so let's try and create the mutation to login. And this, we have the token auth. Alright, so we're using token auth, and this we need to provide the username, password. You can see it's actually giving us an hint, and our password was the token for us, which is the token. So we need to take out this query. Alright, so once we run this, we can see we are getting our auth token, which is the GWT token for this user, which is the SAMI user, with the password and all that. So we are getting the auth token. Alright, that's fine. But one last thing we want to do is, once the user log in, because this is a login operation, we don't just want to get only the token, we also want to get the username and probably the email as well. So for that, we'll actually be overriding the auth token auth mutation. Alright, so in our user app module, which is a schema, we're going to be creating a simple mutation. I'm going to bring it in here. I'm going to create the class. I'm going to call this class obtain. First, we need to really import the GraphQL GWT. So once we import this, we can create our class. And this is going to extend from our GraphQL JWT dot JSON web token mutation. Alright, and in here we just want to add the user object, which is, so once we add the user object, you just want to call the class method resolver, and this is going to take it from the class. So this is going to return the class. We will be adding our user, and this time we want to get the user object from the context. Alright, so once we get the user from our context, we add it to the class, and that's all. So this is all we need to do to actually add that piece of functionalities, which is adding the user object to our JSON web token. So once we save this, we need to head back to our project schema. In here, we are going to import. Let me just comment this out and bring in our own obtain JSON web token class. So in here, we're using the same name token auth user.schema, and we are getting the obtain JSON web token mutation from our own class instead of using the default obtain JSON web token mutation. Alright, so we just need to save this, and our server is still running very well, fine. Okay, so we can actually refresh this same user. Alright, so if we sign up this time, okay, because we specify only the token, now we can also specify the user. Alright, this is returning an object. I want to get the username. So this time, if we run it like this, you can see we are getting the token, which is JSON web token, and we're also getting the user name, the email along. Alright, so once we execute this, you can see we are getting the username and we're also getting the email. So this can be very useful when the user logged in. We want to get the username to display in a particular page and use the token for authentication and authorization. Alright, so that's all we're going to be doing for our authentication. So in this very video, we covered the full-fledged authentication system in our GraphQL API. We were able to create new user, we were able to log in with the JSON Web Token, and also provide the user object along with the token. So we're going to be stopping here. In the next video, we'll see how we're going to introduce the authorization techniques in our question type and answer type. See you guys in our next video.